Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to today's webinar on enhancing your digital image, putting your LinkedIn profile to work. I'm Jeff Scott, CEO of Section 810 Communications, and it's my pleasure to welcome everyone to today's session. Now, just before I introduce our special guest, a couple of quick housekeeping items. For those of you that are new to this series, this is, I believe, number 7 in a series of free webinars that we've been conducting throughout the coronavirus pandemic. With each of the webinars, we typically have large audiences from multiple countries. Everyone's line is on mute. However, we do want to give you the opportunity to communicate with us through the presentation. If you notice over in your control panel, you have a chat questions area, and this gives you an opportunity to type in questions for us. At the conclusion of the presentation, Esther and I will be looking at those questions where we can read them out loud and provide answers to the whole audience. As time permits, we'll also stay online and answer those questions via text if we run out of time in our hour schedule. Now, you'll also have the ability periodically to respond to polls that we have or to answer questions using an icon you have that's in the shape of a hand. So right now, if you can see the welcome slide and you can hear my voice clearly, go ahead and locate that hand icon and click on that if you would. Raise your hand just so I know that you can see in here. It's great. I see most of the hands going up. Don't worry if you can't find a hand. Some systems, I think including Macs, may have missing hands. That's okay. But there's nothing worse than doing a webinar when no one can hear you. So I see everybody. I'll go ahead and lower those hands and we will actually start in with the presentation. Now, as Esther and I pull up our webcams to say hello to you, I'm pleased to welcome Esther to the presentation. Esther, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's really an honor.
Great. Esther and I, for the audience, we met, I guess, about a month and a half or so ago. So I was on LinkedIn and saw some trending posts that had to do with communication, and Esther was the author of those. She is a LinkedIn profile transformer. She's also the COO of Xspirit, where her company does a lot more than just profile transformations, but anything digital with website development and things like that. I was impressed when I saw the content that Esther was sharing on LinkedIn and started commenting on it, and we ended up having a LinkedIn connection and we brainstormed. And I thought, as we're going through these webinar series, we talk about communication, DISC personality assessments, leadership, and I realized communication is so much more than just the spoken word or the written word. Our digital presence is a key part of communication. And so we brainstormed this idea of putting together a program that would allow users to learn how to do that and be effective. So maybe a little bit more introduction, Esther, on your side will be really welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for coming. I am honored to be here. So yeah, it was the power of LinkedIn, really an honor to meet you through LinkedIn. And I'll tell you a little bit about my story. I have a branding agency, like you said, and I hopped onto LinkedIn a few years ago to, to try to drive sales to my business. And after 3 months, I closed my first deal. And after a while, I really got the hang of it, and people started asking me for advice, and they would come back and say, you really helped me get started. The idea you gave me was really helpful. So eventually I said, hey, this falls under social media marketing, and I have a branding agency, so I can, provide this service. And here we are. So I do LinkedIn profiles, LinkedIn content, LinkedIn management, and everything like that, and strategy. So speaking of LinkedIn profiles, let's get to it. I'm here to share with you everything I know so you can try to do your own profile.
Excellent. And for those that are interested, again, here's Esther's contact information. We'll be coming back to this at the end of the session as well. But with all the webinars that we've been conducting as Section 810 Communications, we want to provide value to you and something that you can put a handle on, actually get a hold of and use. So what I would encourage you all to do, if you'd like, is open up your own LinkedIn profile, because as we look at some of the features and capabilities that exist within the platform, you might want to follow along periodically we'll toggle back and forth between some slides and the actual LinkedIn system to take a look at example profiles, mainly mine, because Esther has helped mine to be transformed. And that's one of the things we'll be doing. So Esther, let's jump right in and talk about getting to know LinkedIn just a bit.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, so, if you're all here, you probably know that LinkedIn is really awesome. I'll just share with you a few things that I really love about LinkedIn. I really like that everyone on LinkedIn is so focused on business. It's less about entertainment and it's more about business. And, most of us, we have a career, and a career is very much a part of your life. So for me, I just love coming from having an Instagram and Facebook account for many years, but not really using LinkedIn very much. Coming here has just been so refreshing, in a sense that everyone's here for the same reason and you can accomplish things. So just that aspect for me has been really awesome. In addition to that, I really like that, I always say LinkedIn is the world's biggest networking event, but even for introverts or people who are a little bit more shy, I find that they can often express themselves so well through the written word. And that's really a great opportunity. And then I also find that I just love to be able to just connect with people that I never thought I could connect with. Somehow it's like I suddenly have the opportunity to get to know people in my industry, watch my competitors, which is awesome. It's really nice to see what other people are doing. I get to message a CEO or, engage on content of someone who I really admire. And I really like that. And I think it's a very interactive platform, like most people, you comment on their post, they reply, which is so cool.
No, you're absolutely right. In fact, let's take a quick poll just to show everyone how that works and to get a quick view of the audience. I'm going to launch something here just to find out a little bit more information about you as the audience, and that's pertaining to the use of LinkedIn for looking for a job. A lot of people, and myself included, used to think that the real value of LinkedIn is in looking for a job. So quick question for the audience. Do you think that the primary purpose of your LinkedIn profile is really to help get a job, or is that the focus point? So we'll leave that open just for a moment here. Interesting numbers coming in. Just a couple more seconds and we'll close the poll. Great, so let me close that. So interesting, just about 19% of you thought that it was useful only for looking for a job. I would have been in that minority grouping, and 81% said no, and you see that it's valuable for more than that. So that's outstanding, love to see that. We'll be coming back to another poll in just a moment. But let's jump right into the profile because there's so many different aspects of that. I know we're limited on our time, but let's jump into the profile.
So yeah, here you have every aspect of your LinkedIn profile from top to bottom. There may be a few sections here that you didn't realize existed or you didn't realize really mattered. So we're going to go through each one, and I'm going to show you what I do for my clients and what you can do for yourself.
Great. And we start with the banner on that. That's probably, I think, what you think is one of the most important parts because it catches people's eyes right away.
Yeah, I mean, your banner picture right up here is awesome. I love it. I love that image of you. I love the personalized quote. It really encapsulates everything that you represent. And yeah, the banner, it's, a lot of your profile is reading, and a banner is just another thing in addition to your profile picture that everybody is kind of typical and everyone expects you to have. The banner is just another visual, another really nice graphic you could put on your profile. And I think it makes a big difference when people come to your profile, when it looks nice. And I have 3 samples here. One is yours. One is someone who is a designer and is able to show some of their work, which is always awesome. And one is actually just a banner that I made for a client on Canva who's on a lower budget. And I just wanted to show people that it's really easy to just do yourself. Um,
And
so
thank you for
yeah, get
creating
something
mine,
you
by
like.
the way, because you were the one that actually created this as part of the services. So I appreciate that. And I agree. When I look at most profiles, I don't know what the percentage is, but I think very few people actually have that banner. And to me, one of the things you want to do with your profile is just make yourself stand out, celebrate you, because there's a lot of what I'll call belly buttons on LinkedIn. Everybody has one, and people put in their profile what everybody else has. Make yourself different, stand out in a professional way. So I agree with
Yeah, and yeah, absolutely. And one of the most amazing things I find about LinkedIn is that when you Google your name, your LinkedIn profile will come up as like the top hit. So it's like that's your opportunity to make it look really awesome, sound good, look good, so that's great.
I agree. Unless you have a name like Jeff Scott, and then I usually don't show up first on Google. Believe it or not, there's more than one of me.
That definitely is a common name. Yeah.
So the picture,
Um,
let's talk about the picture.
Yeah, yeah. So we have your LinkedIn profile picture here. I think a lot of people know you need a picture, but surprisingly, I often get asked, do I really need a picture? Does it have to be professional? And, my answer always is if you're spending your time here on LinkedIn, to drive sales or to get a job or, whatever it is, if you want your time to matter, then, I really suggest not only having a profile picture, but having a professional one, as professional as you can, because if you're going to want to do business with someone, you want to look them in the eye, get a little bit of a feel
Mhm.
for their personality, and that's the point of a profile picture. And I also think it shows people that you're serious and you're really here, you're showing up. um, but if you can't get a professional headshot, that's also okay. I tell people all the time, if you have a good smartphone, just go
Mhm.
outside on a bright day, go in the shade, make good eye contact, lean forward, chin down, and just take a bunch of pictures until you get a good one. And choose the best one. Always on a good solid background, so people just look at you, not at the background.
Right.
And yeah, you could definitely DIY it as well.
I agree. And I like the practical points that you've got here on the slide. And I found that for the most part, profiles I've seen have some sort of a professional looking photo, but every once in a while you'll see one that's more maybe be a great appropriate picture for Facebook or something else. And
Yeah.
often it's getting your face as the primary focus of that picture, especially now with all the social isolation and not doing networking events, not shaking hands and meeting people face to face. Being able to let them see who you are, that is an important part of what our profile should be doing. So I agree with you on this.
Absolutely. I feel it always goes back to, make believe you're at a networking event and, you would look someone in the eye, shake their hand, and, so that's what you want your profile picture to accomplish.
Yes. So headlines. I know you're a big believer in headlines shouldn't just be your title because that might make people yawn just a little bit.
Not only that, it doesn't necessarily tell people what you do. It depends what the name of your business is, but if the name of your business is either not like Chase Bank, so not everyone like knows what it is, or if the name of your business happens to not explain what you do, then if you just say like CEO at South Park Suppliers, for example, no one really knows what you do. So yeah, I'm really into the headline for a few reasons. Um, One is anytime that you comment on somebody's post, not only your name will show up, but your headline as well. Same when you put out a post, people see your name, people see your headline, and actually when people Google your name, they'll see your headline as well. Um, so it's really important to have a headline that number one describes what you do. And number two, I always say you want to be a little different, stand out, try to catch people's attention, because a lot of people might be a photographer, for example, but you want to tell people exactly what kind of photographer you are and what makes you a little different. So you'll see here, there's a few profiles that I've written for people, and they kind of really help people stand out. we have Mr. Trieger is a white background photographer. So it says, exactly what he does, who he services, boom, and innovative cameraman, I think, just really represented his personality a little bit. He's very creative, always figures out a way to get a good photo. Yeah, and yours, Jeff, is I really love as well, transformational trainings in communication, leadership, and sales. So I think that says exactly what you do. It has that nice ring to it. And then we got the personal part, avid beach roamer and PhD, pretty happy dad. I absolutely love that. And that's your line.
And it was fun to do this, and there's a balance in here. And thank you again for your input on this. And I enjoy that. I spend so much time working within the academic system, traveling and speaking at universities. And I don't have an academic PhD, but as you know, I have 9 children. And so with that, I consider myself a PhD. I'm a pretty happy dad. And so
Absolutely.
It just gives it a little bit of a personal twist. There's a balance here. I remember years ago, I was at a career fair at Carnegie Mellon University. And one of the students came up to me with this small folded piece of paper, and I open it up. Now, everybody at a career fair brings a resume. Typically, I had 8.5 by a resume in hand. And I opened this up, and it was a cartoon resume. She was an artist, and she actually drew her resume. She wanted to stand out. Now, she absolutely did stand out, but as an employer and a recruiter, it was a little bit over the top. So I think in the same manner with the headline, it's good to make it personal and just keeping it still within that professional realm as much as you're comfortable. The other thing I know is when you have your own business, it's one thing to put in exactly what you do. And I know some of our audience may be thinking, I'm a developer, I'm head of content, I'm whatever it may be. And it's okay to still put in what you accomplish and not just have to do the title. It's just making yourself pop, stand out just a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes I write a profile for someone and it's like, executive assistant at a certain place, which is great. But then after that, you kind of describe, a little something about yourself, executive assistant, what do you specialize in? Web development or whatever it is. I always try to find a way to make people stand out. And the other thing is that your headline really grows with you. So, if you're at a position, you're not looking to grow or move, you're not looking to take jobs on the side, that's fine. But then maybe a few months down the line, you're maybe looking for something new. It's always okay to update your headline accordingly.
I agree. I completely agree. This about section, I didn't know fully about this when you and I started talking, and I asked you to provide your services to help with my profile. This is where we spend a lot of time, and you had a lot of good input on that. So talk a bit about some of the do's and don'ts here. I know there's a lot of information on the screen for everybody to read.
Yeah, so this is actually the largest section on your LinkedIn profile, and you're right. A lot of people really leave it out or, only put a few lines there. Or, I'll see sometimes it's like in list form, which is a little boring, a list of your accomplishments, kind of like a resume.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but actually LinkedIn, I believe, allows 2,600 characters, which is a lot. So they do expect you to use this space. And I like to use it to really tell your story. This is where we're gonna, they saw your headline, they saw your content maybe, or you message them, right? They see your name, they see your headline, so they see what you do, and they're like, oh, sounds interesting. Maybe that's a service that I need. Maybe that's someone I'd like to connect with more. So they right away, the first thing they'll do is go down to your about section. And that's where you have the chance to draw people in, tell your story. And the most important part is my goal is always to tell people a little bit about you, your skills, why they make you really good about what you do, explain what you do, who your target audience is, and why you're the best one to serve them. And
I agree, and I think
yeah,
I'm sorry. I was going to say, going into people who may be an employee within a company, again, it's okay to put some of your accomplishments, but maybe just not list them all out there. But again, what makes you different? If I'm a recruiter and I'm looking for someone who's a Python developer, I might want to learn some of their accomplishments, but I also want to know a little bit more about them as a person. I'm going to shift for a moment here, Esther, and go over to my profile, just as an example. And again, those of you that want to follow along, please open your LinkedIn profile so you can take a look at these areas. You see the About section, as you mentioned, 2,600, there's an ample amount of room here to put in, but LinkedIn will truncate it, and it truncates it different on a computer versus a phone. So people aren't going to be overwhelmed. Don't feel like you're going to inundate them with too much information. They can drop into the See More to get into all the details about your About section. And anywhere within the profile, of course, clicking on the pencils would allow you to go in and change that. But that About section really does make a difference when you make it more about you and make it more personalized.
Yeah, and I find that it's for people who possibly want to work with you or learn more about you. So, it's okay to make it long. And I actually just wrote profiles for a whole team. So I wrote one for the owner, and then I wrote one for all the team members. And like you're saying, even if they're in a great, well-established position, but they're looking, but even if they're not looking for a new job, it's still a really nice space to just tell people a little bit about what you do, what you're really good at, what your current position, your accomplishments, but like in a story form. Tell people why you like it. I'm really organized, I pay attention to detail, things like that. And that's why I'm really good at, blah blah blah. So
Yes.
then, and then if you ever are looking for a new job, it's like you already have that all built in. Well, at her previous position, she did this, this, and that, which is really nice.
Yes, I agree. The contact information, this one's a bit of a double-edged sword. It's great to put it out there. Now, some people are saying, I don't want to put all my contact information out there. I know, as an example, when I launched Section 810 Communications and my title popped up as CEO, I started getting a lot of emails and sales calls and things like that. Some people might want to. The beauty is you have the option, but for those that want to be easily accessible, a lot of people don't know that they can put in all this information.
Yeah. So one more thing about the About section is that you want it to also just be really organized and easy to read. So I do suggest that people put their contact information in there as well, even though they won't be links. But sometimes people will finish reading and they'll be like, okay, let me email this person, and they just
Right.
want to see your email address right there. However, it's also important to have links, where built in, where LinkedIn offers you, you know, to post your contact information. And yeah, I know people are definitely wary about this. Obviously, if you have a company website and a company phone number and email, that's always awesome. I do think that you should try to have at least an email address up there. If you're working with a personal email address, or just you don't need your email address to be on everybody's mailing list, which is definitely a problem. I would say open up another one. Just have a professional looking email address that people could reach you at. And also, double check that your contact information every few months, because I'll, believe it or not, I'll often see that people have the email address that they opened up their LinkedIn account with 10 years ago, like AOL.com.
Right.
So it's, just check it, make sure it's up to date and relevant, and has information that you want people to see.
That makes a lot of sense. It definitely
Yeah.
does. And you're right about some of the old emails, so that makes sense. This I love. The featured section, I had no idea about some of these areas. And again, whether I'm working for a firm, I have my own company, whatever it may be, putting something that celebrates you, things you've accomplished, whatever it may be. Talk about this just a little bit, because I know you have some great thoughts here.
Yeah, this is a brilliant spot, honestly. And I have to admit that I didn't know about this until a few months ago either. LinkedIn just gives you this little option to, like, hey, like, add featured items. And then they'll actually show up on your profile really nice and big with the images. They let you add your articles, they let you add a post. So, sometimes I have a post that I see did really well. People really like the information I provided. I'll put that on there. An article that people really liked, images of your work, links to websites, I mean, it's great. I have, a few articles on there to help people with LinkedIn. And then you have the welcome video on there, which is awesome. That's, always a really great way to, for people who come to your profile, that they can like really quickly get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, I think this is so helpful because of the different types of media that you can use. So in my case, I have, yes, the article that I wrote with some pictures that I took. I have that introductory video. That's just really a link to the company YouTube channel. But then I also have a PDF brochure about Section 810. And by the way, for those of you on the call here, if you go into the handout section, that PDF is available to learn more about our company, what we do. But to put all of those out there in the featured section so people could very quickly see whether it's an article, a drop-down PDF, or a downloadable document, or a link to a video, anything like that. It's a great way to showcase what you've accomplished or who you are. Again, what makes you different from everybody else out there. That's what this is designed for.
Yeah, and you would think there's a limit, but there's not. Or
Yeah.
I haven't hit it yet.
Yeah, when I posted a video just the other day of today's webinar, I wanted to promote it as you did, and I put that in my featured section. So if someone came to my page, one of the first things they would see is join us on June 18th as I welcome Esther Adamson, the LinkedIn profile transformer. So
There you
it does
go.
make a difference to be able to do that.
Okay, so this is actually two different sections that are combined on one slide. We have your experience and education. So these are pretty straightforward, just a few things. Your experience and education, make sure you tag the companies that you work for or the school that you attended. It just looks really nice. You can see the icons, if the company or school has a LinkedIn page. So that's always really great. The other thing is you can see here by Jeff, by Section 810 Communications, you can actually add not only a description, which is great, which is similar to your resume, listing your accomplishments, but also media. So you can really put links here, media, and it's just another space where you can show people who are really going all the way down and they really want to know about you, give it to them, that's
One of the
it.
things that I thought, you and I talked about this with the whole experience section. I know others may be thinking the same thing. We're going to do a poll in a few minutes just to see how often people do update their profile. But sometimes the LinkedIn profile, especially those that have been on the platform for a long time, it can age. And it's not like cheese or wine that does well. When it ages, sometimes it's not as good. For example, when we looked at my profile, I saw that I had things from my experience back in the 1990s that frankly were really not relevant, and they were discussed in way too much detail. So to weed out things, where are you now in your career, and what should your experience reference? This is also not your full resume that you're going to look at when you're going for a new job, and it's going to match up with your background check or whatever else. It's okay if you have a short stint at a company and it's not something that's really relevant. You don't have to put everything on there. You want your profile
Yeah.
to put you in the best possible light, obviously with honesty and integrity, but doing it in a way where share what makes sense, share what's going to be valuable to you and to those that are looking at you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get this question a lot, and I tell people all the time, you're selling yourself here at the end of the day. That's what you're doing, whether it's looking for a new job or you're selling a product or service. So it's your choice. You get to choose what you want people to see. So if there's an experience that's irrelevant or a really long time ago and doesn't apply to the industry you're working in right now, absolutely, you make it look the best you want it to look for the people that you're hoping to work with right now. Yeah, so absolutely right.
Completely agree. And that really ties in with skills, but gets into a little bit more detail here.
Yeah, so skills is, all the way down. It's a smaller part of your profile, but it's a nice way for people to, just see what you're good at. LinkedIn allows people to endorse you for your skills. So it really just adds credibility to your profile, especially if they see that you are endorsed by, a person with a lot of experience in a similar field. That's always really nice. I believe it also helps with SEO. LinkedIn does have a great search engine. built in. And when people are searching for someone in your field, if your skills are listed, then you'll rank a little higher. The other thing that I do is LinkedIn actually allows you to pin 3 skills to the top, and that's typically what people will see before hitting see more. So what I do is I shuffle those around. You'll see back on the slide that like the 2 top ones have a lot, and then the one on the bottom only has 2 endorsements, and that's because I just pushed it up to the top. So that's a neat little trick.
No, and that makes a lot of sense. And here I just pulled up on screen. You can see my profile, okay, Esther? Am I sharing the profile? Okay, great. So under if you go into modify your account, under the add profile section, this is where a lot of those areas can be found. So quickly you can go through and put in your skills. So for example, I've got skills that are listed here, and this is where, again, people can endorse you, or you can put in your own skills, and you can also ask people to endorse you. As your career transitions, you may say, I'm not so much focused on that technical skill as I am now in this leadership skill. So you can just let this evolve and grow over time. What I found too, this is important, again, thinking about those that are part of an organization. Why are skills important unless I'm looking for a job? Well, if I'm working with someone, in one of my most recent positions, I was working with a global company, and I had colleagues all throughout the world and a lot of colleagues in Asia. And as I may be collaborating with them, I will connect with pretty much anybody on LinkedIn, especially if I have some sort of a business relationship. And so I would connect with them on LinkedIn. As I'm looking at their profile, I might see a skill and say, oh, I didn't know you had that. It could lead to another area of collaborating together and growing within your job. Again, it's not just looking for a new job. How do I expand the value that I'm adding to my employer? So use this, because it certainly can be very effective.
Yeah, it's really easy. I update my skills all the time. I'm like, hey, I'm really good at that, and just add one in.
Now you can say, I do great webinars. See that? That's a new skill, and I'll be the first one to endorse you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Speaking of endorsing and recommendations.
Absolutely. So I love this. I find that recommendations often go unnoticed and they're underused. I just recently, last month, I had a little extra time and I said, you know what, I'm getting those recommendations, and I messaged a bunch of people. And surprisingly, people are happy to give you a recommendation. I think that, a LinkedIn recommendation is kind of like a testimonial on a website, but I think they're even stronger because they can actually only, be given from somebody from their account. So they're real. And you go to someone's profile, there's a little like more tab, I think, and then you hit recommend or request recommendation. So you could actually send someone a message and say, hey, I'm updating my profile. Would you mind writing me a recommendation about the time, we work together doing blah, blah, blah. And people are usually really happy to do it, and people write such nice things. So I think it's really great to try to get those. And it's great to recommend people as well. If you work with someone and you enjoyed it, go ahead and recommend them. It's a great thing you could do for someone.
I agree. And this was an area, again, you helped me in. And so thank you once again. But my recommendations, having used LinkedIn mainly in earlier parts of my career as a job seeking tool, I had recommendations that people would put in for me when I was looking for a job. And so the recommendations were very relevant to that, but not as relevant to my career, my life today. So there's a couple things. Number one, at your request, I did use that ask for recommendation. And I know some people are on the line with us today that have actually gone through and done recommendations, as we see from Dorn and Anmol and some recent people that I'd reached out to. You're right. People are happy to do that. And it's always good to reciprocate. To one hand washes the other. And it's always good to do that. But the other thing is, within a recommendation, you may have received one 5 or 10 years ago. It's not as relevant. You can hide it. You don't, just because it's there, you don't have to delete it. Yeah, any of the ones that I have here, we can go in and I have to take a look exactly, see where it was. But I know with those recommendations, you can go in. Let me see if it gives me the option here to show people how to do it. I can ask for a revision on that, and I can also show.
Yeah, that's great.
So if I have old recommendations, maybe from years ago, I may say, this is not as relevant right now. I'll just click on that and it won't show my profile, at least temporarily. So again, use this to your advantage because it allows not just you to showcase yourself, but others to showcase you. I know for me, when you're asking for a recommendation, it's okay to ask people, listen, can you focus on this that we did together? You know, Dorna is an example. I had traveled to Bucharest and then to Cluj, which is in Transylvania, in Romania, and we did presentations together. And I said, hey, if you can talk a little bit about when we traveled to Romania, because I wanted to focus on the international side of my business. So ask people specifically what you'd like them to say if there's a specific area you'd like them to focus on.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So how are we doing on time? We've got about 15, 20 minutes left on the time. I think we're doing great as far as our allotted time, Esther. So maybe we can jump in and talk a bit about interests.
Yeah,
And again,
I believe this is the last part of your profile, so that's good.
Great. And just before we get into this, a reminder to the audience, for those that may have joined late, you have the opportunity to ask us questions by going into the questions and chat area, and we'll be looking at those in just a moment. So feel free to go through. We will leave some time at the end to make sure we have an opportunity to review those questions. You have an expert online in Esther, so by all means, think about those questions and type them in, and we'll look at them.
Thank you. So your interest is all the way down at the bottom of your profile. It's companies or, you know, schools or universities or whatever it is that you follow on LinkedIn. And I just think it's good. And first of all, follow a few companies that you like in your industry. You know, again, it kind of just looks nice when you get to the bottom. You see some nice logos. You could see Section 810 Communications there. And also, I just tell people, just like the rest of your profile, check it every few months. You know, you might be surprised. There's something you were interested in when you were in college, and maybe now you want to unfollow them. So, you know, keep up to date. Maybe you change jobs, you're in a different industry now. So I like to, you know, not have like a ton, but just like, you know, a few like 5 to 10 key items that you follow.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. And you just mentioned you periodically go in and check to see what you're following and is it still relevant. So let's take a quick poll here, make sure everyone's still tracking with us. And I'd like to know, this is something I think would be really interesting. Outside of adding a new job, because most of us will update our profile when we change jobs. Outside of that, how often do you go in and review and update your profile? Have you done it within the past 6 months? Maybe 6 to 12 months, or has it been over a year? I know for me, there were sections of my profile that had been well over a year since I had really reviewed them. So take a moment and look at that. Outside of adding a job, when did you last review and change your profile? A couple seconds and we'll close that out. Perfect. So 64% of you said you've done it within the past 6 months. Kudos, good job on that. 14% said 6 to 12 months, and 21% of you said it's been over a year since you've done that. And that makes sense. I think a lot of us fit into that category, but thank you again for sharing the responses to the polls with that. So let's go at this point, Esther, into a bit of a case study. We've gone back and forth, but I know you really did help in a lot of areas on my profile, so have at it. And by the way, you were so gentle. You didn't say, you know, Jeff, this really needs help. You were so good at saying, hey, why don't we look at your profile as part of the background for the webinar? But there was a lot of areas for improvement, and you were great in doing that. So I'll let you have at it with the before and after here.
Thank you so much, and it's always been a pleasure to work with you. So yeah, we have here Jeff's profile, great profile picture, you know, very professional, great smile. We see you work at Section 810 Communications. You got a nice company page over there, so that's great. Your headline is good, but I'm not exactly sure from reading your headline if you could help me or not. And then on the next slide, yeah, we see going down that your about section is very limited. It's just one line. So that's definitely a huge focus. And we spent a lot of time on that. So on the next slide, we could see the afters. And here we see now we have two awesome pictures of Jeff. You can see his personality over there. Again, like I said, you know, his quote. And if you look at his headline now, it tells you exactly. He gives trainings in communication, leadership, and sales. Again, gives you a little bit of his personality, and it just really draws you in and hopefully brings you down to the next slide, where we see your about section. And here, I would say hop over to Jeff's profile after the webinar, and there's a lot of great information about exactly what he does, why he's really good at it. I know I watched some of your trainings before this webinar, and you're excellent. You give great advice, and you're great at what you do.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And you've helped me be able to tell others what we do. But this was very helpful. And again, part of what you really encouraged me in is make this, in addition to professional, make it a little bit more on the personal side. And there's always that balance, and people have to determine what they're most comfortable with in sharing. I do have a large family. I have 9 kids. People think I slurred my words when I said that, but that really is 9. And at the end of the day, that's part of what brings a uniqueness to my business. And it's funny, I used to joke with people and say I lost my identity years ago and I became known as the guy with 9 kids. It's like I'm not Jeff Scott anymore. But I realized that, especially as I teach on personalities and do things, that experience is what gives me some nuances that are unique in my business. So combining the professional side and a little bit more of that personal flair was really helpful. Now, when we went through this, one of the things I know we talked about is, how do you get your profile? You do this for a living, and I hired you to work with me, and you were great in doing that. So talk about where it's necessary and what people can do on their own.
Yeah, so, you know, here we are, and you're like, well, you just gave me all the information. So, do I really need a professional to write my LinkedIn profile? The basic answer is no, you don't. And, you know, that's why I shared everything with you here. And, you know, in marketing, we say that there's 2 reasons why you should hire someone to do something for you. It's number 1, if you don't understand how to do it yourself, or number 2, if you don't have time. So I think, you know, by now you'll probably know if this is something you could do yourself or not. So if you got it and you're like, this is awesome, I'm going to take this information, change up my profile this afternoon, then that's great. You know, that's really good. But if you feel like you're not really sure how to organize your thoughts, or you have a hard time talking about yourself, or you just really don't have the time, then that's why I'm in business.
Yeah, I agree. And what I will say, it's very often it's a combination, it's a balance. Some of the things that you recommended, I took verbatim and changed. Some of it I twisted and changed a little bit because I wanted to have my own voice, if you will, on that. But one
Yeah.
of the things I will say is it was so valuable to hire you as a paid client. You did a lot because you really brought a fresh perspective. When you would say to me, you may understand what that says, but I don't. And if I'm a potential client of yours or business partner or employer, or whatever it may be, then this is a challenge. So your fresh set of eyes, your fresh perspective really helped me see things. You are very good at wordsmithing. You're good at putting together sentences that are intriguing, that draw people in and make it conversational. Very often people think that writing is just listing facts, and they're not.
Right.
It's making conversations, drawing people in, and then of course it's leveraging the different features as we've looked at today in this webinar. But I would encourage people, take a look at your profile, make some changes, do it on your own. But if you really want to have a profile that's in that top notch, absolutely consider bringing in, certainly US there, but bring in a professional to help from that standpoint. But I certainly highly recommend your services because
Yeah,
you're
thank you. Thank you for your kind words. And like you say, it's really a very involved process. You know, it's not like I'm like, all right, people are like, so I'll send you my resume and then you'll write my profile, right? And I'm like, no, no, no. I'm going to talk to you. I'm going to draw out all those things you don't know how to talk about, like what you're good at. And, you know, I'm really going to get your story. So I could, you know, I always tell people, I'm like, I need to have a really good understanding of who you are so I could present to other people who you are. And yes, it's very, and like you said, of course, like you want each profile to have that person's personality. And that's why very often people will say, I like all the information, it doesn't sound like me. So I'm like, well, let's go through it and change it up a little bit so you feel really good about it, because of course that's important.
Yeah, and one of the things you used in your approach I thought was very good. It was almost a journalist mindset where we sat down. We had several calls where we would talk and spend adequate time. And I felt like you really wanted to get to know me because it wasn't just a cookie cutter approach. Everyone's different. I've looked at some of the things you've done and things you've done for me, and it is different. But that whole journalist mindset of let me interview you, let me understand you. And I would say something, you'd say, I don't get that. Tell me again. And that was really helpful. And again, sometimes we all need someone else just to hear what we're saying, see what we're writing or seeing, and then see, does it make sense to them? It always makes sense in our own minds, but the real important thing is, does it make sense in the audience or the reader's mind? So that was good.
Yeah.
We are
I always
just
try to
about.
imagine. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
No, I always imagine that, like, I try to write things the way I want to consume them. When I'm on LinkedIn, I want things to be super clear, easy to read, and that's how it's got to be.
Absolutely, completely agree. I was just saying, well on time. We've got about 8 minutes left till the close of the session. And once again, to the audience, we've left some time here on purpose for you to ask questions. When else do you get a chance to get, quite frankly, free advice from an expert? So ask your questions and we'll take a look at those and see. So use the questions tab. It may be called chat and you're on your control panel. But go ahead and type in those questions. We'll pull those up in just a moment, and Esther, you and I can look at the questions tab, and we'll look at those together, and I'll read some out loud, and we'll look at them. While we do that, just as I advance the slide, just so you have Esther's contact information, for those that do want to get in touch, by all means, and we can include this in the follow-up email as well. But let's take a look at some of these questions that are coming up. And again, feel free to type in your questions as they come up with you.
Yeah, and I really just want to thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity, and really every one of you for coming. I really appreciate it. And yeah, here's my information. Let's connect on LinkedIn if you want to learn more. Send me a message, an email. I try to make it a rule to always reply. And yeah, thank you for coming.
Great, and thank you again for being here. So let's take a look. We've got a question here from John, and thanks for the compliment on the banner, John. Here's a question, and this is coming from a sales perspective. Should you list key customers on the LinkedIn page or leave that for the resume? What do you think about that? I have some thoughts, but I'm curious your thoughts, Esther. How do we do key customers promotion, if you will?
So I'm assuming it's like, I'm not sure what business he's in, but it's like, oh, like I worked with someone in the hospitality business, and it's like, well, we've serviced the Hilton, the Ritz, things like that. And the answer is, I think that it's great to put it in, but not like in your face. So you don't want to like, start off the profile, I work in the hospitality industry and we have serviced the Ritz, that, it's kind of like I'll often put it down all the way on the bottom after the contact information. I know by you, I believe you have a quote that you really like, but sometimes, I change that up for people. So sometimes I'll have like, fun fact, we have some of our, or some of our clients include, and then list it over there. So I kind of try to stick it in a way that's not too salesy, but definitely, like if you have some big name clients, stick it in somewhere.
Yeah, and John, what I would say, what I like to do, and I haven't done it quite as much in my profile in the past. In the past, I would put in under the experience section. For example, when you're working for one company, if you close some of their marquee accounts in that company, put them in that section under your accomplishments. From a sales perspective, it's good to say how we're hitting quota, making President's Club, close these accounts. I would make it company specific more so than in the general section. That would be my thoughts on that.
Yeah, and you can use the media there as well. So you can have a picture of, one of the Hiltons in a certain location that you have serviced, and you have a picture of them and put a caption on the bottom, the Hilton, Brooklyn Hilton service in 2015 or whatever.
Yep, makes sense. So we've got a few more here, and keep the questions coming. What we will do in about 5 minutes, if we haven't gone through all the questions, I'm always sensitive to the time. We scheduled an hour for the webinar. We know people have other things they need to do, and some people don't like to leave a webinar if it's still going on. We will continue to look at the questions. A few minutes after the top of the hour, we'll shut down the video and audio portion, but we will stay online. And Esther, if you're available to join me, please do. We'll take a look at the questions and we'll provide answers via text. And this way, people, they need to drop off, by all means do that. So we'll go for another 5 minutes or a little bit, maybe 8 or so, and we'll look at some of the more of the questions after that, just by text. There's a couple questions here. One from Esty. If you could help clarify that just a little bit, is messaging through LinkedIn not enough? I'm not sure what you mean on that. If you can maybe clarify that a little bit.
I think I know what she's saying.
Okay, please.
Okay, I think perhaps she's saying if I have an awesome LinkedIn profile and I don't really like to post a lot, or I'm a little bit of a lurker, a little bit nervous to engage, is it okay to just message people? My answer is like this. LinkedIn is kind of a big picture. To have success and close sales through LinkedIn, which is a whole nother webinar. It's a mix of a few things. You want to start with an awesome profile. You do want to have some content, and then you also want to be engaging with people and messaging people privately. So I would say that when you're messaging people, what people will typically do is they'll be like, oh, like, let me see if I want to work with this person. They link over to your profile, they check it out, maybe they go to your website, and then they'll very often go to your page and see if you have any posts, any articles, who you're engaging with. And if there's nothing there, they're kind of like, well, I don't really know, what's this person talking about, things like that. I'm not saying they're not going to work with you. Hey, if you have a really strong portfolio, that's awesome. But I would say try to post even once a week, which is like a few times a month. You want something up there to really show people that you're serious, you're an expert in your industry. You share industry tips, things like that.
Okay, great. Thank you. We've got some really good questions coming in here, Esther. I think we'll definitely be spending some time after we close the line here. Here's a question from Suzanne. How about security settings? Which ones do you find really important and highly recommended? Do you want to talk about that a little bit, or do you have any thoughts on the security aspect? I know I've gone through times and I've wanted to hunker down and not be too public and then be very public. So what about the security aspect?
Yes, I'm not sure exactly which settings. I think there are a lot. The biggest one I think is if your profile is public or not. I think this depends what you're doing on LinkedIn. Are you looking for a job? Are you looking to close sales? Do you have a large target market? Do you have a very niche market? There's only specific people that you want to use LinkedIn to connect with, and once you're connected with them, you don't need anyone else to see your profile. So I think it really depends what you're doing, how much you want to be found. I would say at least your name and your headline and kind of also your profile picture should be public, because I know that when people connect with me and there's no profile picture, it's a little iffy. It depends how strong their profile is. I mean, if they have a great headline and I could see where they're located and, I could see the company they work at, I probably will accept. But, the more that people could see, the more they know you're a real person. After all, you are behind the screen and this is social media. So,
Yes.
If you want people to engage with you, you have to give something back. So I think it really depends what you're trying to accomplish and how far you want to go.
I think that makes sense. Here's a great couple of questions from Maya. It says, I'm only 19, trying to build my network. What are your top tips for me to connect with people outside the industry I work within? And then I also, similar, I have limited experience in education. What are your top tips on how I can expand and make my profile more interesting? Those are really good questions. I know there's people on the line that are in that either still within school or recently out of school. I have some thoughts, but I'd like to hear what you think on that, Esther.
Okay. Yeah, sure. First of all, I'd just like to give you a lot of credit as a 19-year-old, already being on LinkedIn and building your network. That is awesome. So you're showing up and that's great. As far as how to use your profile, I'm going to answer the second question first, because that's what I have up on the screen. The experience and education. start with your high school for now. And in addition, if you are planning on going to college, or if you're already enrolled, I believe LinkedIn allows you to enter a projected finishing date. So if you started in 2020 and you're supposed to finish in 2024, I believe that you could put that in. So the other thing that you could put in for that was education. For education, you can also, if you ever took a course, if you have any accomplishments like that, put it in. If not, I mean, hey, you're young and people will see that, so that's okay if your education isn't that great. As far as experience, I mean, try to find something that you've maybe done. Did you volunteer one summer? Was there an internship? Did you run a blog for a little while? Did you help with the neighborhood organization or something? If you can, try to find something. And if you don't have anything, maybe take this summer as an opportunity to try to get involved in some volunteer work or a small job, so you could start to build it up. Or maybe it's not important to you right now. Maybe, you could kind of just have an about section that sort of talks about, I'm a young 19-year-old, but I'm excited to get into the career world, and here are my interests. And if you're not looking for a job right now, then it doesn't matter. Again, some of these questions are hard to answer when I don't know the context. And as far as who to connect with, start with just people that you like, that look interesting. Sorry. If you're scrolling through LinkedIn, you like someone's content, engage with them and connect with them. Again, I don't know the context, but maybe connect with people in your area, connect with people in a city that you're planning on moving to, connect with people who are going to the college that you're going to. Just try to start to create your own personality. And if you know an industry you're going into, or maybe you're looking at 3 different industries, the world's your oyster. It's okay in the beginning to just really connect with anyone that looks like someone you want to learn from.
Yeah, I agree. I have a couple thoughts. And by the way, I'm going to make an exception on the webinars, Esther, if this is okay with you. I know we're past our scheduled stop time right now. Some of these questions, we have a lot of questions coming in. They're really good. And I think they'll be better if we answer them verbally rather than just through texting. So for those of you that need to drop off, we fully understand. We've reached the 12 o'clock hour. If you need to drop off, thank you for joining us. And we hope that this has been beneficial. We will have a recording of the session. I know some have asked, I joined a little late, can I get a recording? All of the webinars we've done through this series are on the Section 810 Communications YouTube channel. So the full recording will be available that we'll have online. And I think by answering these questions verbally, they'll be incorporated into that recording. So I'm going to make that exception. Are you okay, Esther? Do you have some more time that we can keep going through these questions?
I love these questions.
Okay,
and
great.
once again, everyone that has to hop off, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to answer more questions.
Yes, I echo that completely. So with Maya's question, I agree with what you said. At 19 years old, to take an hour invested listening to us talk about this, I give you a lot of credit for that. I mentioned I have 9 kids. Some of my kids are in that age bracket, and I love when they just really are emphatic about pursuing their career and their education. I think part of what's important to put on your profile is what's relevant at the moment. So if you're 19, let's say if you're in school or recently out of school and you did a special project or an internship, that's relevant, and it may be helpful for people to see who you are. Now, as the color of my beard may dictate, I'm not 19 anymore. So if I put in a special project I did in college, who cares? So it's all about timeliness. What do we put in there? Make it timely. Look for people that are on talking about different topics that are important to you. Get into the conversation. Put a comment in. I'll see people that look like they're, Esther, you're an example. People that have great ideas, they're active. I'll put a comment into what they said, or just acknowledge, give them some recognition for something that they said. Like, comment. The more you get involved with LinkedIn, I think the more visibility you get. I'm not sure exactly how their algorithms work, but that's important. And once you comment on someone's comment or post, connect with them. it doesn't hurt to connect with people. So I'm always looking to expand my network and get more people. That's the other thing.
Yeah, engaging with people, we talked a lot here about your profile, but engaging with people is one of the most powerful things you could do on LinkedIn. Every time that you comment on someone's post, they'll see it, their followers may see it, and their people who are connected to them that you're not connected to will see it. So especially if you leave not just love this or well said or I agree. If you leave a really thoughtful comment,
Mhm.
it will often get likes. So, let's say 6 people will like your comment. It can even show up as the first one on someone's post. So engaging on other people's posts, is very valuable, and you could build your network just like that.
Yes, and most people might know this, or many might, but when you put a comment, if you put the @ symbol and then someone's name, it'll actually give a drop down. So when I put a post about Esther joining today's webinar, I put @Esther and it showed me Esther Adamson, and I was able to click that, and this way it posted and went into her feed and got that recognition. Feel free to acknowledge people by name. That's a really
Yeah.
good point. And so this ties into Maria's comment also, and John, about putting in relevant experience. For those of us that have been in the workforce for a longer period of time, we don't necessarily want our LinkedIn profile to have 100 different jobs. Hopefully we haven't
Yeah.
had 100 jobs, but if we did, we don't necessarily want to advertise that. Things happen in life. Sometimes we end up with bad jobs that are short periods of time. A company's acquired, we had issues, whatever it is. Again, your LinkedIn profile is not a job application or a background check where you have to put everything in. So Maria has a question. What if there's gaps? What if there's a bit of time? If you look at my profile, you see there's a gap there. And everything doesn't have to be to the date. Sometimes I'll use years instead of month and year because there may be a gap. Life happens. Things happen in life. It's not that we want to shine a spotlight on it. We don't want to hide it, but we don't really just need to advertise it. So I think, again, this whole concept comes down to asking or putting in relevant information. So answers,
Yeah.
we'll go through
So
the questions. Go ahead, please.
no, I was just going to say, as far as absolutely, you don't have to have it down to the month, although LinkedIn gives that option. Feel free to just do the year. And if, that stretches the month in between jobs a little bit, I think that's fine. I think you have to just be prepared to explain the gap. So if there was a year that you weren't working, just explain, well, I took some time off for this or that. I took a course in the meantime. You should have a way to be able to explain it. And as far as I see John asked the question, how to position yourself if you have a lot of experience, I always tell people, think of your dream position. If your dream opportunity came at you tomorrow, what would you be doing? Who would you be working for? And that kind of helps me shape either a target client or a target job offer. So I just did a profile for someone who is looking for a new job, and he does have many, many years of experience. And I kind of narrowed it down to that he's an excellent project manager. And so I just talk about what those skills are that make him really good at it, how he delivers things on time and things like that. And it's not like he could only be a project manager, but people will see, oh, he has this set of skills, he's really good at that. Hey, can you also do this for us? It's not like if you write one thing, then nobody's going to contact you for something else.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, I hope
I
that's
think that's
helpful.
good. Esther, here's a great question from John, and I know we're staying over. We'll try to go through these kind of quickly here to see if we can get to everybody's. John has this question. Hi, Esther. I'm curious how you're able to capture each client's unique personality when you build a profile for them. My company hired someone to create templates for us. I didn't like any of them. I had to change them to something I was more comfortable with. That's a really good question. Talk about how did you get to know me? How do you get to know your clients and capture that in the profiles?
Well, I'm going to zero in on the word template. And I'm going to say that templates are rough because you don't necessarily want to fit into a box. And you shouldn't fit into a box because you are trying to appear unique, especially if you're selling something. And that's why I know for me personally, when I do a profile for someone, I spend a full hour with them doing the intake session so I can just really get a feel for who you are and what your skills are. So, if you're going to try to fit that into a template, that's that's really hard. And I think that, if you're doing it yourself, sit down and say, okay, if there's, 15 web developers, what makes me different? Am I just really good at organizing things? Am I really good at, the UI, the UX? Like, what do you specialize in? What makes you really good? Maybe you're really quick. Maybe you're really focused. You really want to list you're selling yourself. So if I kind of imagine if, again, going back to that networking event, if you're there and you come up to someone and you're trying to get that job, what are you going to say to them?
Yes, completely agree. Here's a question from Mike that's good, and it ties into, let me, I just lost the question. Let me come back down here. The question is pertaining to following companies. Is it okay to be following rival companies or influencers at competitors under the interests section? That's really interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think it's all about how you feel, and how you relate to people and what your relationships may or may not be with your competitors. Again, imagine if you saw a competitor at a networking event, would you go up to them and shake their hands? And if you would, I think that it's okay to follow them. One of my clients says, I don't have competitors, I have colleagues. And I really love that. So, I think that if you're following one of their competitors, they inspire you, you like what they do, and think of it more as like not necessarily copying them, but you're showing support. There's room for everyone in the business world. So I think it's okay. I mean, obviously, you might not want to be following 10 of your competitors and nobody else. That might look a little funny. But if there's someone who you want to support, go ahead. Don't hold back. Why not?
Yeah, I agree. And I think that when we follow, my understanding is when we follow different interests or companies, their information will show up in our feed. So to me, that's a way to stay in tune with what's happening. So if I'm in a field and I want to see what my competitors are doing, by following them, I may be more in tune to the posts they're putting out and things like that. So I think it's appropriate within reason to have other competitors and
Exactly.
people that you're following. And the following section or interest, in my opinion, it's not something that people are as excited and interested in as they are about your about section and things like that. I have a lot of things I follow that I may need to get off because they were relevant 10 years ago, but they're not so much anymore. And it just becomes cluttered. But I wouldn't be concerned as far as the perception if people see that you're following certain companies or interests.
Yeah.
So got some great questions coming in here. I'm trying to look at some that are here, that the people are still here. Barry, you have a question. I'm not sure I have the answer as to the questions. I was trying to add posts to my feature section and it didn't let me see old posts. Any advice? Are you familiar with what maybe you referred to there? I know when I add posts to the featured section, it puts them in order and there's a scroll bar. Let me just come across here real quick. So in my featured section, I've got the scroll bar here. One thing I did find, I'm not sure if it's helpful, it was a little bit of a nuance in LinkedIn. When I want to add, clicking on the plus to add, I was trying to add this PDF brochure. And the brochure happened to be open and it didn't give me an error message, but it just looked like it would save and it never did. So just make sure whatever you're putting in there is not.
Yeah, I do find that it's a little tricky. Could definitely malfunction sometimes, like you're saying. Sometimes I'll just shut the tab, close the app, and add something new. Also, if something's not working on the phone, I'll go to the computer and vice versa. Actually, it does allow you to reorder those items. So if you put 10 things on there, but you're like, I really want number 8 to be on the top, you could reorder it. As far as it not showing you your old posts, I don't know about that. You might have to scroll back really far to to find an old post, but I don't know why it wouldn't be showing up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
I do
that
see
makes sense.
here.
Go ahead, Esther.
No, I'm just looking at Sarah Newcomb. She says she's asking about a profile picture. presenting a real current self appearance? Does it have to be professional? I think she's talking about if a profile has to be professional or not. The picture, I think it should be, I mean, it could be fun. You could be, you want it to not be too colorful. You want to be looking straight at the camera, making great eye contact. Success wise, having a good profile picture is the best way, for people to contact you, to message you, to follow you. Yeah.
Okay. No, that
Priyanka is
makes sense.
asking, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Priyanka is asking, there will be a recording on YouTube
Yes.
under Jeff's 810 Section 810 Communications
Yes.
channel.
Yep, and we should we'll be sending that out. But if you search YouTube for Section 810 Communications on the company page, there are all the webinars we've done. I believe there's 6 or 7 recordings out there now, and this will be planned to be out there as long as we have no technical challenges. It's a good question from Sahana here, Esther. Number one, can you talk more about what type of content one should share as posts? I see a lot of people posting every single certificate, and I get terrified to post even my master's graduation certificate. And number two, does it make sense to share hobbies, like a portfolio manager sharing his or her hobby of photography skills? And then when you have a signed NDA and you're not able to share experiences, what can you do? So a few different questions in there. Let's talk about what type of posts should be shared. Let's get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, there were a few things in there. So I'm not sure if some of them are combined, but as far as posts, again, that's like a whole different webinar. And something that I do is help people create content and LinkedIn strategy. But it's really about telling your story over time in small little pieces. So you want to be educating people about what you do, maybe telling them a story about a recent client you had, or, through storytelling, kind of be telling people about the service that you provide. Get a little personal sometimes. People like to feel like they know you. Share tips from your industry. As far as sharing your accomplishments, I think that is something that should go in your experience or education section. I don't know if you need an image. I think people pretty much will believe you. If you say you have a master's from a specific university, I don't know that you need to share that. If an employer wants to double check it, you could share it with them privately by email. And as far as hobbies are a nice thing to talk about either in the about section, you share that you're a pretty happy dad of 9 children, which is awesome. That's personal. Or you said I'm an avid beach roamer. So it's nice to say, just like in a bio, you'll be like, yeah, in my spare time, you can find me reading books or by the beach. But again, it's something at the bottom. And that is definitely a nice thing to share in a post sometimes. You could say, great day at the beach. It really helped me refresh and, can't wait to get back to work tomorrow, but always bring it back to work.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, Sahana, to make it personal a little bit with a hobby is good, but it's not going to be a make or break it as far as any business use. But it can be a connection. If someone says, black belt in a martial art and someone else studies martial arts, it can be a point of connection, but it shouldn't be the leading point. It's just something else to put about yourself. Certificates, I agree. Things that are really important, great. I see things, if you got a certificate for making class 80% of the time, I wouldn't necessarily post it because it's not as relevant or not as critical. So I wouldn't put everything out there, but things that are really important that will make people go, wow, do that. Again, avoid the belly button syndrome where everybody has a belly button and everybody has a degree. Not everybody, but things that are really common. If it's just a me too, then it's not that exciting. Use the things that are exciting. What makes Sahana different? Put those things in there. And as far as your NDA question, yeah, that's a challenge. If you're under a non-disclosure agreement with an employer that you can't share information, the question is, what can't you share? It's always okay to put, I believe, that unless there's something really strange in an NDA, it's okay to put that you worked for a company. Generally what the company did, as long as it's public information, you're typically not in violation of an NDA. I'm not an attorney, but that typically I believe is true. but to put what you did without releasing IP, intellectual property, or any trade secrets or anything like that. Generally, what you did, what your function was, I think that's okay to do. But I always try to watch that because, again, you want to respect even a previous employer to honor the document you sign, but you can still make it, I think, generic enough. Let people know who you are, what you did, without giving away the secret sauce to a Big Mac. I think
Yeah, it's like your title and the company that you worked for should always be okay. And I saw that Barry Ackerman asked about adding posts. I believe he means to the featured section from a while ago. And absolutely, you could do that. Again, it takes a while to scroll through, but you should. I recently did that. And I see that John asked about creating a LinkedIn company page. It's much easier than you would think. It's much easier than your personal LinkedIn profile. You know, it's like, should be somewhere on LinkedIn. If you're on the computer, upper right hand side, create a company page in the settings. And oh, there you go. Yeah, so you probably have my company page. There should be, if you didn't have one, it would be create company page, or in work. How about on the work tab? No, I think it would have been
Here it is down here, Esther. Create a company page.
It is in the work tab. Okay.
It's very straightforward to do, and just moving around a couple of windows here. Yeah, and once you set up the company page, again, it's very simple to do. I couldn't agree more. There's another question. We won't have time. I'm gonna wrap up in just a moment here, Esther. But someone asked, how do you drive traffic to that site? There's a lot of different. We could probably have a whole webinar just on that and doing paid promotion versus organic promotion. There's a lot of different dynamics of that, but setting up a company page. And by the way, those are still on the line. I know a lot of people dropped off. If you haven't followed Section 810 Communications or Esther's company, please do. We always appreciate that. The more followers gives us more visibility in promoting our products and services. So by all means, please do that.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the most important things is just getting that logo into the little tile when you create the company page, because then when you scroll down to your experience on your personal page, you know, the company will look legitimate. And then it's, for the most part, it just asks you to simply input, you know, your company information, website, phone number, email, things like that. And you know, if you could also write a description about what services your company offers, it's pretty easy, and you know, it looks good.
I agree. So Esther, we're going to go ahead and wrap up, because I know we've stayed on about 25 minutes past normal, or 20 minutes past. And again, I thought it was important. You all, as the audience, had excellent questions, and I thought it was relevant to answer them. So for those still on the line, thank you for sticking with us for a bit longer than normal. Esther, any closing comments from you before we shut down the lines? And I'll answer a couple of these questions by text. Sarah and John, you had a couple comments. You're both welcome, and thank you all for joining us. But any closing comments from you, Esther?
Again, just thank you for having me. It's been great working with you. I love what you offer. Your service is great, and you're really a pleasure to work with. And again, thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate the support.
Great, and I thank you. I thank you to the audience for spending time with us. And Esther, I expected this to be a great webinar, and I absolutely saw that it was a great webinar thanks to you. Your expertise in this area is outstanding. I think we were able to put a handle on it to let people pick it up and do something with it. It was very actionable information. Thank you so much, and looking forward to collaborating with you in the future as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And with that, we'll close the lines. I see a lot of comments coming in from different countries. Thank you so much. We'll go ahead. If there's any additional questions, we'll take a look at those, but you are certainly welcome. And I'm glad that this is helpful for you. Esther, I'll go ahead and shut down my camera. If you want to do the same, okay. We'll mute our lines. And if you want to stick on and put any comments or answers to any of those questions, we'll do that. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day. Be safe and be well.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Esther, it looks like we've got all the questions answered here. So I'll go ahead, unless you're typing in a response to someone, I'll go ahead and close out the session. Are you cleared up on your
Yeah.
end?
Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you again, everyone,
Okay.
and we will talk again soon. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.